Welcome to this first entry of the indie developer journey, in which I share my money, motivation and management experience as an indie game developer. There's thousands of videos on YouTube, tutorials how to make video games, devlogs how other people have made theirs. But indie game development is so much more. There's so much more topics to cover. In this series, I want to shed some light on my experience. I invite you to share yours so that we can learn together. As this is the first video in the series, I thought we would start with a 2020 recap. Ideally, I make one of these videos every month where we look at 3 recurring topics: money, motivation and management. And I would like to make each of these videos through the perspective of a theme. And the theme for this video, as you probably figured out by the title, is communities and why they are so incredibly important to us as indie developers. But first things first, unless you've watched one of my tutorials before, you're probably here through the YouTube algorithm and you're thinking, who's this guy? I'm Stefan, I'm a 7-year-long hobby/indie game developer, and I've mostly worked on networked multiplayer games. I haven't released any titles yet because I used to make games that were for just me and my friends, and I gotta say I infringed quite heavily on some copyright material. So it seemed like a better idea to stay out of court than to release my content to a broader audience. However, that changed back in 2019 as I started working on my first commercial project, Soul Whisper, a multiplayer strategic RPG in which I don't plan to infringe on any copyright materials. Now, I've gotten quite far with Soul Whisper in 2020, and that may have something to do with a little virus and me having a little bit more computer time. In 2020, I've made a total of $1,300 through game development without having a single game released. And that requires context. The first context is that it's super scary to record this, and it's going to be even scarier to edit this and then upload this, because it's like a cardinal sin for creators to share their revenue, and I don't know why that is. It's a lot of money, but I've also definitely spent more than 1,000 hours, probably more than 1,300 hours to get to this point. So if you look at it from a dollar to hour perspective, it's not even 10% of the minimum wage where I live. Now, still, even though that, I'm not showing this or sharing this to show off or to brag. Indie game development is not only hard for the amount of skills that we have to learn, but also it's hard from a budgeting perspective, an accounting perspective. How are you going to fund your game? And there's many ways to fund your game. The path that I've chosen is one of them. And I'll definitely show other paths in this series of how you can do it as well. But I want to be transparent about this. I want this to be an experience sharing moment between you and me and all of us together, and I hope that you can learn from my experience. So I definitely want to give a lot of context on that income, where it exactly came from, and definitely how I've spent it all and then some more. But before we can do that, we really have to get into the theme of this video, and that is community, because that is an integral part of how I've gotten to the point where I am today. Now, the income I made is largely tied to the community that I've been able to build over the last 1.5 years. But having said that, I immediately want to emphasize that money should never be the reason that you seek out a community or try to build a community around whether it's tutorial content or the game you're making. We as indie game developers need to learn an incredible amount of skills, a very diverse skill set. It's not just, coding and game design and art and animations. It's also accounting and project management and how do you budget things and marketing your game. There is a lot of skills to learn, and you can't learn it all by yourself. One of the best and one of the fastest ways to learn new skills is to engage with other people, to observe, copy, and eventually expand on their knowledge. It is through talking with our peers, with other game developers, that we basically practice to articulate our own thoughts and our own design decisions. It helps us to give feedback, to get tips and hints. And by engaging with other people, bouncing ideas off other people, you have instant access to all the knowledge that peer has gathered so far in their indie game development life, whether that is educational or practical knowledge. And that is why I think that a community is so incredibly important to us. Whether you're an indie game developer, aspiring just beginner, or already well on your way, we all need a community of peers with whom we can engage and we can learn from each other. And even if you're just doing indie game development as a hobby, even then you want to have a community, because you're only enjoying your hobby when you're not stuck. And you inevitably, many times while making a game, get stuck. And the longer you are stuck and the longer it takes before you get unstuck, the less enjoyable your hobby is going to be. So also you hobby game developers, I'm talking to you, you also need a community. When I started working on Soul Whisperer back in September of 2019, I asked myself if I have that community. Do I have the right people around me to help and get help from? And although I got a couple of friends in the game development industry, some even at AAA studios, they rarely have the time or the right knowledge skill set for the broad amount of topics that I would be needing feedback for in the coming years. So I looked for a new community, one to join or one to create, and I ended up creating one. I started making YouTube tutorials and live streaming the game development of my own project. And I didn't do it for the money or the recognition. I wanted to gather a group of people together, a group of people that would help each other out to express their creativity through video game development. And I had no idea how that would turn out. I mean, I had no expectations, no growth numbers, no targets. All I wanted to do was share my knowledge, give first before you get something back. And I've been fortunate enough to get a wealth of knowledge in return. And I mean, I'm eating breakfast with a smile every day on my face, looking at the Discord server, seeing how a couple dozen people have helped each other out, you know, working as peers together, even though they have no stake in each other's project. That's just amazing for me to see. And the idea that I've been able to bring those people together is, I think, the biggest reward of them all. Now, I don't want to drag this topic out any further. I think it's very clear why a community is so incredibly important. And I think it gives a little bit of a picture of where I've come from and how I've gotten where I am today. And I'm just extremely fortunate that I don't only get a wealth of knowledge out of the community that I've helped build, but that I've also gained a small revenue stream out of it that maybe is not so small anymore. So let's get into that. So to make this 100% transparent, let's also quickly look at 2019. I spent about 350 to 400 hours from September to the end of December on all of this, live streaming and making tutorials, and I've made a total of $8.58 in 2019. So just to let you know, this kind of stuff doesn't come falling out of the sky. If you're here for the money, you can stop. You need an absolute big intrinsic motivation to invest this kind of time. In 2020, I've made a total of $1,308, and the majority of that income comes through video-related content. It's from the Twitch subs, bits and ads, the YouTube ads, YouTube memberships, stream donations, and Librio coins. Librio coins I earn through also uploading my content on the Librio platform, which is a cryptocurrency blockchain alternative to YouTube. So with that, about 80% of my total revenue is basically video related in some formal way. I also keep a close eye on promotions related to art assets like 3D models, sprite sheets, but also sound effects, background music for video game development, software licenses or courses related to game development, or for me as a creator. And I mostly do this for myself. I try to make my game on a budget, and if I, through cheap methods, can make my YouTube tutorials look a little bit better, I'll take that opportunity as well. Now, once I purchase it, and I think that the quality versus price ratio is just really good, and this might interest other people in the community, I usually give that tip through an affiliate link. And if other people decide that they think that their content is also really good for them and they purchase it, then I'm rewarded a small part of that revenue. And that's the last 20% of the income of 2020. Now that you know that, you might be asking yourself, well, where did you spend it on? And I spent it pretty much all on Soul Whisperer and on making my tutorials look better. So let's go over the list of expenses in 2020. I bought $477 worth of art assets. These are 3D models and sprite sheets. I spent a little over $50 on sound effects and soundtracks for background music. I spent about $200 on software related licenses, mostly for the Adobe Creative Suite. I've also spent $125 on a VPS server. This is a monthly recurring price of about $25. I use this for Soul Whisperer, which is a multiplayer game, so I needed to test stuff out and of course to do the alpha tests. And it's also been a tremendous help in the creation of a 6-hour plus course on multiplayer in Godot for dedicated servers, authoritative multiplayer. So yeah, the VPS has definitely come in handy for both Soul Whisperer and the tutorials that I've made. And then lastly, I spent about $3,000 on gear, and that includes a new desktop, which of course will go a couple of years. I've got 2 new monitors, which give me a little bit more screen real estate to increase my productivity. I needed to replace the battery in my camera at one point. I got studio lighting, I got sound panels to make the tutorials and the live stream sound better. And there's a couple of other things left and right. So yeah, that's a little bit more than I made. And this is just the 2020 expenses. The 2019 expenses are not included in there. So I've definitely spent even more on starting up this channel, the live streams, on Soul Whisperer. So yeah, there's definitely more money going out the door than there's actually coming in. Now there is one really interesting thing though with this revenue in 2020, and that is how it's spread out over the months. In the first couple of months, there wasn't really that much revenue at all. It wasn't even much better than what I had seen in 2019. But in May, the channel got accepted into the YouTube Partner Program, which really ticked up the revenue per month. Then I guess it needed to settle in over the summer months, and only really to the end of the year, it started ticking up towards $200 or $300 per month. Now, that's of course a good outview for 2021, and hopefully the channel can maintain that kind of a course over 2021, as that will allow me a lot more budget to reinvest into the channel and into Soul Whisperer. Alright, that's probably enough talk for one video. So as I said, I want to do this on a monthly basis, so the next video is going to come out pretty soon already. I'm super curious to hear what kind of themes you would like me to talk about in the next couple of videos, so make sure you leave a comment down below. I got a couple ideas myself, of course, and I think in the next video I'll talk about funding and different ways that you can fund your indie game dreams. Of course, being a creator making tutorials is not the only way. I hope to see you in that video. Do make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss out. Until then, keep on gaming, keep on coding. See you later, guys.